Hello, and welcome to Mount Podcast, the podcast of everything Mount Prospect. I'm your host, Howard Kleinstein, the Director of Digital Communications for the Village. Mount Podcast is a podcast about the movers and shakers in the 56, and interviews with people who make Mount Prospect a place where friendliness is a way of life. I'm here today with Richard Rogers, who is one of our oldest serving members, not of the village board, but you have been one of the oldest serving members in service to Mount Prospect for 40 plus years, I believe. And
it's actually 32 years.
32, okay.
Yeah.
So Richard, you've just finished up your term as a trustee. Tell us a little bit about where it all began. Where did you grow up?
Well, okay. I grew up in Chicago. Went to Lane Tech High School, where I took architecture. Then went to the University of Illinois. At Chicago campus, I was one of the first students who got through the university at the new Circle campus at the University of Illinois. And
because it was the pier before that?
Yeah, it was the pier. I started at the pier. I also took some courses at IIT to fill in, and University of Chicago. So I graduated with honors, and I had a lot of great courses. I took both architectural and engineering. A couple of years later, I wound up becoming a registered architect. Passed it on my first try, which is usually pretty difficult. And then I took 2 years or so after that, I took the professional engineer's license and passed that also. So I'm both a registered architect and a registered professional engineer. And then my wife and I got married. We moved from Chicago to actually unincorporated Cook County. This was 1968 when we moved into the area, into the house that I'm in now. So I've been there for 60 years. And we, a couple of years later, we got our area got incorporated into Mount Prospect. So officially I've been in Mount Prospect, 57, 58 years. So all in all, it's been a great drive. I started in 1990. There was an opportunity to start it on the sign review board in Mount Prospect. So I took that opportunity, and that was my first service to the village of Mount Prospect.
Okay.
When I started there, I was with quite a few people. The sign review board just got started, and we were cleaning up the signs in the village of Mount Prospect.
Why did the signs need to be cleaned up?
Well, there were quite a few signs that were too tall. There's a couple of the signs were as much as 40 feet high. There were billboards everywhere. Some of the signs were just too much information on the signs. So the village had passed an ordinance to improve the signs itself. And we spent quite a bit of time. There was a 10-year program to get the signs changed over into what would be to meet the new sign reviews.
Well, why is it important to?
Well, it was important because the signs themselves made it look like a circus. And so it was a matter of getting those signs all uniform so that there was a uniform appearance throughout the village. It really did help. And as you drive through the village today, you can see the efforts of that sign review, because the signs are basically low. All of the signs have basically flowers or plantings around the base of the sign, so it doesn't look like the sign is just a stick coming out of the ground. It really helped the village to have this uniform appearance throughout.
Okay. Let's back up a little bit. You and your wife got married and you moved out of the city and you came to what would soon become Mount Prospect. What attracted you to living out this way?
Well, at that point, I was practicing architecture. I was working for an architectural structural engineering firm, and I did quite a few buildings out in the area. And I saw how nice this area was. So I started doing some checking. Obviously, the schools in Mount Prospect are absolutely fantastic. We found that out real quick, so I was looking for a new house. We checked out several areas, and the area that I actually moved into, which was unincorporated at the time, was a really nice area. It was basically a farmland. I was the only second house on the block. They had put in the streets.
Yeah.
The streets were stone. There was no pavement yet, and there was one other house on my block. I picked the house because it was off the runway from, at that point, Palwaukee Airport. Now it's Chicago Executive Airport. But we were not on a runway line. It was the high point of the ground from Wolf Road all the way to the river, to the Des Plaines River. So it was a nice high area. And the only problem that we had is the first year or two, we got struck by lightning a couple of times because we were the tallest.
Really?
Yeah, we were the tallest house on the block.
Oh, dear.
You're right.
How did that affect the house? Did it?
Fortunately, there wasn't much damage. I did have to replace the chimney the first time, and then I put a lightning rod on, and that took care of most of the problem. But there were a couple of times when the lightning rod got hit and the ground had basically exploded around the grounding rod. So for the most part, it was the best place to be. But at the same time, I didn't realize being the highest point would not be advantageous for lightning.
Who thinks about those things? Of course.
That's right. Yeah, that's one thing I missed.
Yeah.
I tried to get everything else, and hey, there's always some good with the bad.
Yeah, yeah. So you moved here, and so what led you to want to serve the community? You've been on a bunch of boards, and how did you decide to do that?
Well, I've always been community-minded. Previously, I served as a trustee for Illinois Masonic Medical Center, so I had already had, the vocation for serving the community and giving back. Obviously, you can't live in a community if you're not willing to give back a little bit. And it was only about 10 years after we moved in, got settled, got the children in schools, where everything was now starting to run smoothly, that I decided I had to do something for the community. And that's when I found the opportunity on the Sign Review Board. Fortunately, they accepted me, and it went from there. And I served like the full 10 years on the Sign Review Board, making sure the signs were all in compliance. So it was a rewarding experience for me, much more than I think, than just a job, so to speak. I felt that I was accomplishing something.
Yeah. Okay, so you were 10 years on the Sign Review Board, and then what did you do?
Well, then the sign review, actually, after we basically got all the signs into compliance, we were converted into the Planning and Zoning Committee.
Okay.
And so I just kind of automatically went to Planning and Zoning. A couple of years after that, Planning and Zoning split off to Planning and Zoning. So they became two. So I stayed with the zoning because of my architectural background. It was a real benefit, I believe, to the village and to me also. I learned a lot about the village being on the zoning board, seeing the new buildings coming on, helping people with their zoning issues. I mean, most people come to the zoning board and they know they want to improve their home or improve their business, and sometimes we can help them to make the right decisions as to how best to do that.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about zoning. The village has many codes that dictates what can be built and how it can be built and where it can be built. As an architect, you probably had a lot of insight into those things, did you not?
Well, of course, that's really my background, and that's where, like I say, I could really help people. It wasn't very long before I think everybody on the board realized that I had some of the most expertise, and I became the chair of zoning for a number of years, and I don't remember exactly how many, but I was on the chair for quite a bit of time. I was Arlene Jurasek, who is the mayor, the future mayor at that point,
Right.
Was the chair of zoning. I assisted her. I became number 2. And at that point, when she decided to run for the Board of Trustees, I was kind of automatically pushed up to the chair of zoning. So that's how, I got to that position.
Yeah. Well, why is it important? I've videotaped many zoning board of appeals and planning and zoning committee meetings. Sometimes somebody wants to build something and it goes a couple of yards or a couple of feet into a setback.
Mm-hmm.
And why is it important that we have setbacks in Mount Prospect?
Well, a number of reasons. Usually the main reason is for fire protection. With the separation of houses, the fire doesn't spread from one house to the next, to the next, to the next. That's what really caused the Chicago fire back in the 1800s, is because the houses were so close. Once one started, it just spread like wildfire.
Yeah.
No pun intended. In our case, most of the houses are usually a minimum of about 15 feet apart. You usually have at least 7.5 feet on the side of a house, and quite often it's more, which keeps the fire from spreading. It also allows the fire department to get in between the houses to use their water or whatever to put the fire out. So it's really beneficial not to let the houses get too close to each other. On occasion, if there was a really good reason, we would allow them to encroach maybe a foot or 2 or sometimes 3 feet into the side yard. But that was an unusual case. Normally we tried to force people to go to the rear of the property, but sometimes a garage would be there, and 7.5 feet is not enough room for a car to maneuver to get to the back of the garage. So we had to allow the garage maybe move out a foot or 2. But usually this was a case where the garage was in the backyard and it wasn't next to the neighbor's house. So there were some reasons for doing that kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of people don't understand that, and it must be tough to tell people no.
It's always tough to tell people no. No, everybody wants to fulfill their dreams, and their dream is to have this huge house that goes lot to lot, lot line to lot line, and you can't do that. So sometimes you have to be the bad guy. I know we had one case where a man wanted to put up a side building, a kind of a major shed, but he wanted to do it with a fence post every 10 feet.
Oh.
And it just wouldn't work. I mean, the garage would eventually collapse. He was really adamant that that's what he wanted to do, and we did not allow it because of the fact that it really wasn't structurally sound. So there again, it's where zoning comes in to determine whether a property can be improved by such methods, because of the fact that some things just can't be done, and the normal person doesn't understand that. We had to explain to them what the loading was on just a snow load on the roof of that shed.
Sure.
That would push these posts into the ground because there wasn't enough foundation to hold it up. So zoning is important in many, many cases.
Yeah. So after you served as chair of the zoning board, you became a trustee. Tell me a little bit about that transition.
Well, what had happened is since I had followed Arlene actually decided to run for mayor. When she won as the mayor of Mount Prospect, she had to vacate her trustee seat, and she called around to a couple of people. Fortunately, one of them was me, and asked if I would fill in her last 2 years as trustee, which I did. I was pleased to do that. It was quite an honor for me. And again, it's a place that I can help the village, particularly with my knowledge of construction and architecture. So I did fill in for the 2 years, and I ran for my first term, which would have been the second area that I ran. And I won the election, thank God, for the next 4 years, and then I ran a second time. So I've served as in this May. I will have served 10 years as a board of trustee member.
Okay. So, what do you think was some of the most important things that you saw that came before you as a trustee, things you had to make a decision?
Sure. As a trustee, we did quite a few things that I think were really important for the village. Certainly the rebuilding of the existing police and fire station was important. They were separated because they both needed more space. When the original fire station was built, we had a lot fewer police and fire because the village was smaller, and things kept growing, so that we needed more and more police and fire. And so we separated the two buildings, or the one building, into two buildings, both of which are state-of-the-art. They were just completed here within the last 3 years, and they are state-of-the-art buildings.
And both of them were reused buildings.
Well, that was the good part, is we were able to take existing buildings and then reconvert them to what they currently are. The police station basically was an industrial building, which was perfect because we needed the interior parking. Almost half that building is parking for the police vehicles. So it gives them a place where they're out of the weather. The vehicles are safe, it's great. And then also the police department had all kinds of new areas, that workout areas, locker rooms, etc., places where they could meet. There's several conference rooms that we can also have conferences for people coming in. And I know they do training there also, so that a lot of the training goes on within the police conference rooms. With the fire station was an old bank building. I shouldn't say old. It was an existing bank building, and that building was converted into the fire department. Fortunately, at the back end, they had the drive-up windows, which could easily be removed, and then those became the overhead doors, basically, for the fire trucks. Since that building had a drive-through from Rand Road all the way to Route 83, the fire trucks could drive either way, and there was a pass-through, so you could drive directly through the fire department lot, which is important because those fire trucks have to get out.
Yeah.
When they're going out, they're going out. Because of the I think there's 4 overhead doors, there could always be an emergency vehicle ready to go. All they had to do is jump on the truck and go.
Yeah, at the old location on Northwest Highway, I think there was a portion of Mount Prospect that they could not reach in 4 minutes, and in the new location, that shrank dramatically to where they can reach much more of Mount Prospect in under 4 minutes.
Correct. I believe they can reach about 98% of the village in the 4-minute interval, which is the kind of the life safety issue. 4 minutes is about the amount of time that you need to save somebody's life if they're in cardiac arrest or, other...
Not breathing.
Not breathing, right, yeah. And, of course, the fires itself, you want to put a fire out as quickly as you can. Fortunately, fire is actually a very small percentage of the work that they do. Most of the work they do is EMT, which is taking care of our residents. And both the fire and police do an excellent job. I couldn't ask for any more of them, and fortunately also the board has really supported both the fire and the police departments. They do a great job.
They really have.
Yeah, and as far as I'm concerned, it's life safety.
Yeah.
There's nothing more important than saving someone's life when they're in trouble.
Yes. So you've been here in the village since, well, almost... You moved to the area in 1968, you were saying.
Right.
What do you think is one of the major ways in which Mount Prospect has changed in all those years?
Oh, there's no question we've developed substantially. We went from basically a one-story town to many, many high-rise buildings. And these buildings mostly are in the downtown area, along the railroad tracks, where they should be, in the B5 district. Those buildings have been going up pretty rapidly over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And most of them are basically residential buildings, some of them with retail on the first floor. One of the major achievements this past year has been the addition of Caputo's on the first floor of the building. It's an 8-story apartment building.
Maple Street Lofts.
Yes,
yeah,
the Maple Street Lofts, which has Caputo's on the ground floor. Also, the second building that's gone up on Prospect Avenue has a brewery and a pizza place on the first floor, which will bring entertainment to the village of Mount Prospect. That's one thing we were kind of missing. There was not a lot to do down in the downtown area, and so hopefully this will bring a lot of activity into downtown and make it just a nicer place to be. With all the apartment buildings going up in the downtown area, it will also bring a lot more people, and the people will demand more services. And of course, businesses will see that there's a huge population there, and obviously they'll want to locate there. So it should bring both people and businesses to the downtown area, and just make it that much better.
Yeah, that's a real chicken and the egg kind of deal there. It's like, what comes first, the people or the businesses? And I know that's hotly debated. Will the businesses attract the people, or will the people attract the business?
Correct.
And I think we've seen that the people are attracting the businesses. And
correct.
So the village was correct in creating the density in the downtown.
Yes. If you build it, they will come.
Yes. So, talking about the changes, Mount Prospect is a fairly large town in a big urban area. Yet people always talk about the small town feel of Mount Prospect. How do you think we maintain that?
Well, I think a good part of it has been maintained by the fact that we are a friendly village. And I know that's our motto, but it's true. What's happened is people come here because of the kind of a smaller town atmosphere. Although we're growing bigger and bigger all the time, we still have been able to maintain that small town atmosphere. A good part of the village is single-family housing with pocket areas of retail or commercial space. For the most part, because of zoning laws, we've been able to carefully control the areas throughout the village so that we keep the downtown area for business. Obviously, Randhurst has been a big improvement in the village so that it's drawn a lot of people to the Mount Prospect area. We've also got on the south side a lot of industrial buildings. And matter of fact, that's going through a TIF right now, so we'll be improving those areas throughout the village, throughout the south side of the village. And that should also bring more and more industrial into the village. The nice part about industrial is it pays higher taxes.
Yes.
Which keeps the village going, and we're able to keep the residential taxes fairly low because of all the industrial that we're bringing in. The same with the retail businesses. Those pay higher taxes than single families. And all of that will bring a higher tax base into the village, which will allow, we only need X number of dollars to run the village. And so the less we can collect from single families, the better off we are, because it will improve the single-family residences, and it will improve our schools and parks, any of the recreational things that happen within the village.
So you're right. I think the village has had a 0% tax levy the last
almost 4 years.
Yeah.
And we're talking about the same probably for the next year. Part of that due to the COVID crisis. What's happened is people have stayed at home, and so they started fixing up their houses. They want to improve their homes, and they were spending a lot more money on improving their homes than they were as far as buying other items. Also, a lot of people, because they were kind of trapped in their homes, were eating locally here in the area instead of going other places. Our tax revenue went up substantially, and it just made it that much easier for the village to operate.
So, as somebody who's been involved with the village for a very long time, what would you suggest to somebody who is looking to get involved? What are some good ways to start giving back to the community?
Fortunately, I have talked to quite a few people and tried to get them involved. There's all sorts of committees that you can join right now. That I know the village is looking for qualified people to join the finance committee, the sister city committee. There's probably 10 different committees that operate right now. We're always looking for people. I've tried to encourage people to join these committees and to use their talents to help the village, because it's actually a two-way street, and I've always felt that I've benefited more myself than I've helped the village because of what I've learned and how much it's helped me throughout my career. So it's a real joy to be part of something bigger than yourself.
Absolutely.
I don't think people realize how beneficial that is to your own development, your own career. So it's always helped me, and I would recommend that to anybody.
Yeah, and you don't have to be a certified architect and engineer in order to serve. We're looking for all sorts of people and with different expertises.
Mm-hmm. Of course, and just having different opinions will help to make a consensus and get a compromise on opinions, and to everybody has good thoughts about what they want to do and how they want to do it. So using all of those, two heads are always better than one. Mm-hmm. Using all those people to contribute to making the village better, you always find new ideas. So it's really important to listen to other people. Being a trustee is the same thing. Many people would call me and say, "Hey, why are they doing this? And why are they doing that?" You'd try to explain to them what's going on, but you also then get their opinion. You get to know what people are thinking, outside of the board. Sometimes you get too stuck in an ivory tower that you don't realize the people that you're helping have different ideas.
Right.
So it's really important that everybody try to get involved as much as they can. And even just going to some of these meetings. We're having meetings, at the village, but also throughout the neighborhoods. Those meetings will give people a chance in their own neighborhood to express any opportunities that they have. So it's a good chance for them to speak up, find out what's going on in the community, and then seeing what we can do as a board to help them.
Absolutely, yeah. So what do you think is going to be your greatest legacy as you are, as you kind of go off into retirement from village life?
My greatest legacy is raising a family. I have the very best wife ever. I know she duns me all the time, but that's what keeps me going. I have 2 great children, 2 great grandchildren. they're not great-grandchildren. They are great, but they are my grandchildren. And they've all, it's been a wonderful life. And I see that as my greatest legacy. As far as being the village, I enjoy the fact that I've helped the village grow. We've done an awful lot over the last several years. I've been able to do it in a financially responsible way by keeping taxes low and keeping other fees and things low. When you look around to the various villages surrounding us, most villages charge more for all of their services than we do. We have been very fortunate that we've had proper management throughout. All of the trustees I'm very, very proud of. All of our past mayors I'm very, very proud of. They've done a fantastic job on keeping the village financially secure and yet being good stewards of the finances that we've had. So, if that's a legacy, then I'm proud to be part of it.
Well, thank you, Richard, for coming in and talking to us.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you for tuning in to the Mount Podcast. Mount Podcast can be found wherever podcasts can be downloaded. Come and join us next time.